Thunder rolled across the darkened sky as lightning illuminated the ancient forests surrounding the village of Oduduma. In the distance, a bone-chilling roar echoed through the valleys, causing even the bravest warriors to tremble in their huts. The village of Oduduma, once known throughout the eastern lands for its prosperity and peace, now lived under a shadow of terror. Each night, as darkness fell, mothers would hurry their children indoors, securing heavy wooden bars across their doors. The sound of palm fronds rustling in the wind would make grown men jump, and the once bustling pathways became deserted before sunset. This was not the Oduduma of old, where children played freely under the watchful eyes of their elders, where women sang as they worked in the streams, where men boasted of their hunting prowess around evening fires. No, this was Oduduma under siege, and their tormentor was unlike anything their ancestors had ever faced. A giant lizard, black as midnight, with eyes that burned like molten copper and jaws that could snap a full-grown man in half. "The beast has taken another," Elder Chidi announced grimly during the emergency council meeting in the king's obi. His weathered face bore the weight of yet another loss to their community. Young Adana went to gather herbs near the stream yesterday. Only her wrapper was found, torn and bloody. "This cannot continue," the king declared, his deep voice resonating through the obi. "How many more must we lose to this demon lizard?" The giant lizard had first appeared 3 farming seasons ago. At first, the villagers thought their eyes deceived them. For who had ever seen a lizard the size of 3 men standing end to end? Its scales gleamed like polished obsidian in the sunlight, and its eyes burned with an otherworldly amber glow. Some said it could speak, though none who claimed to hear its voice had lived to tell the tale. Elder James, who had spent time with the white missionaries, adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. "Perhaps we should consult Pastor Michael. His God is said to be powerful against all manner of beasts." "And what of our own gods?" Elder Namdi countered, his voice sharp. "Have we not always turned to Dibia Ezekiel in times of trouble? His medicines have protected this village for generations." The debate raged on as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Finally, King Obiora raised his hand for silence. "We will try all paths. Send for Pastor Michael, Dibia Ezekiel, and the hunter Okoro. Each man's wisdom may hold a piece of our salvation." The next day, 3 men stood before the king. Pastor Michael wore his black cassock, a wooden cross hanging from his neck. Dibia Ezekiel's body was decorated with white chalk marks, his waist wrapped in the red and white cloth of his office. Hunter Okoro stood tall and lean, his muscles hardened by years of tracking game through the forest. Pastor Michael was the first to attempt to confront the beast. On a Wednesday morning, dressed in his black cassock and carrying his Bible and holy water, he led a small group of faithful church members into the forest. They sang hymns as they walked, their voices rising in praise and supplication. "In the name of the Most High God, I command this evil creature to depart from our lands." Pastor Michael's voice boomed through the forest as he sprinkled holy water on the ground. The group had reached a small clearing where massive footprints indicated the lizard's recent presence. The response was immediate and terrifying. Trees crashed in the distance, growing closer with frightening speed. The giant lizard burst into the clearing, its scales gleaming with an unholy light, its mouth open to reveal rows of teeth as long as daggers. "Run!" Pastor Michael screamed, dropping his Bible as the beast lunged forward. The church members scattered in terror, their hymns turned to screams. The pastor himself barely escaped, his cassock torn, his face scratched by thorns as he fled through the underbrush. When they finally reached the village, several members of his group were missing, never to be seen again. 3 days later, it was Dibia Ezekiel's turn. The traditional healer approached the task with careful preparation, covering his body with protective chalk marks and carrying powerful charms. He entered the forest at midnight when his powers were strongest, accompanied by 2 apprentice healers carrying ritual items. "Great spirits of our ancestors," Ezekiel chanted, shaking his sacred rattle, "reveal to us the nature of this evil." He cast cowrie shells upon the ground, reading the patterns they formed by the light of his torch. But before he could interpret their meaning, A low growl vibrated through the earth. The giant lizard emerged more slowly this time, its amber eyes fixed on the dibia with ancient malevolence. Ezekiel stood his ground longer than the pastor had, raising his staff and speaking words of power. For a moment, it seemed his magic might have an effect. The lizard hesitated, its scales rippling with a strange light. But then it charged, moving with impossible speed for its size. Ezekiel's protective charms shattered like glass, and the dibia and his apprentices fled in terror, leaving behind their sacred implements. One apprentice disappeared into the darkness, his screams cut suddenly short. A week later, Hunter Okoro made his attempt. Unlike the others, he went in the early morning light, tracking the beast to its lair. He carried his most powerful weapons, spears tipped with poison, arrows blessed by both pastor and dibia, and a matchet sharpened until it could split a hair. Okoro was renowned as the greatest hunter in 3 villages. He had killed lions, wrestled pythons, and tracked the most elusive prey. But as he crouched in the undergrowth, watching the lizard's lair, he felt fear for the first time in his life. The creature was sleeping, coiled around a massive tree trunk. Okoro carefully took aim with his bow, selecting his most potent arrow. The shot was perfect, striking exactly where he aimed, but the arrow bounced off the lizard's scales like a twig hitting stone. The beast's eyes snapped open, burning with fury. What followed was a chase that would give Okoro nightmares for years to come. The hunter used every trick he knew, every path and hiding place, but the lizard seemed to anticipate his every move. It toyed with him, herding him deeper into the forest, cutting off his escape routes. Only his lifetime of experience in the forest allowed Okoro to finally escape, crawling through a narrow cave passage too small for the lizard to follow. He emerged on the other side of the hill, his weapons gone, his clothes in tatters, his body covered in cuts and bruises. When Okoro stumbled back into the village, his hair had turned white from fear. "No mortal weapon can harm it," he reported to the king. "This is no ordinary beast we face." The village's desperation grew with each passing day. In the marketplace, once vibrant with traders from neighboring villages, stalls stood empty. Those few merchants brave enough to make the journey charged exorbitant prices, knowing the villagers had few options. Even the palm wine tappers refused to climb their trees, lamented Elder Benjamin during one council meeting. They say the beast can reach higher than any creature they've ever seen. The impact on daily life was devastating. Fields lay untended as farmers feared to venture too far from the village walls. Children who once played freely under the African sun were now confined to their compounds, their laughter replaced by fearful whispers about the monster in the forest. One evening, as King Obiora sat in his obi receiving reports of the day's activities, an elderly woman burst in, her wrapper askew, her eyes wild with fear. "My king," she cried, falling to her knees, "the beast. It took my grandson's entire herd of goats. We heard them screaming in the night, and by morning nothing was left but broken ropes and bloodied ground." The king's hands gripped his staff of office tightly. "How many more must suffer?" he muttered, more to himself than to his advisors. "How many more must live in fear?" It was during these dark days that Elder Chidi's wife, Olayinka, began to experience strange dreams. Each night, as the moon waxed fuller, her dreams grew more vivid. She saw ancient ceremonies performed in clearings now claimed by the forest. She witnessed battles between forces of light and darkness, fought with weapons of spirit rather than steel. "The child moves differently," she told her husband, her hands resting on her swollen belly. "When the lizard roars in the night, I feel it respond, as if they are speaking to each other across the veil of flesh and time." The pregnancy itself became a source of wonder and speculation in the village. During a time when women miscarried from fear and babies were born weak and sickly, Olayinka bloomed like a flower in the rainy season. Her skin glowed with inner light, and her eyes held a wisdom that made even the eldest in the village pause. The night Samson was born, nature itself seemed to hold its breath. The usually vocal night birds fell silent. Even the insects ceased their eternal chirping. Most remarkably, for the first time since its appearance, the giant lizard made no sound, no movement, no attack. "It knows," Dibia Ezekiel declared, his voice trembling with emotion as he assisted with the birth. "The beast knows that something has changed." The child's first cry was unlike anything the midwives had ever heard. It wasn't the typical wail of a newborn, but rather a sound that seemed to resonate with the earth itself. In that moment, every drum in the village, whether hanging on walls or stored in corners, vibrated in response. As Elder Chidi held his son for the first time, the baby opened his eyes, revealing their startling blue color. The elder nearly dropped the child in shock. "Eyes like the deep waters of the sacred stream," whispered one of the midwives, making a sign against evil. But Dibia Ezekiel stepped forward, his expression fierce with joy. "No, not evil," he declared. "These are the eyes of the ancestors themselves, returned to us in our hour of need." The news of the unusual child spread through the village like wildfire. Some feared that the blue-eyed baby was a sign of worse things to come. Others saw hope in this extraordinary birth. Pastor Michael visited the next day, bringing with him his Bible and a troubled expression. "This child," he said, studying the sleeping infant, "reminds me of the stories of Samson in the Holy Book. A child born for a purpose, marked from birth with unusual signs. And so the baby was named Samson, bridging the old ways and the new, just as his destiny would bridge the world of men and spirits."
Write the word, continue in the comment section if you want the next part, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. Kindly click the subscribe button, like, comment, and share this video. Watch out for more intriguing and eye-catching videos from your favorite YouTube channel.